Imagine a tense night in Washington when President Donald Trump suddenly faces a decision that could change the world faster than a falling domino. Intelligence reports claim that Iran is moving closer to a nuclear capability, and the pressure inside the Situation Room feels like a pressure cooker with no release valve. Advisors debate fiercely, some urging restraint, while others warn that waiting might allow a dangerous rival to gain unstoppable leverage. One general quietly says that if they strike first, the window closes for the opponent, but it also opens 100 other doors that no one can control. Trump leans back in his chair, weighing politics, military advice, and the unpredictable chessboard of global power. The moment feels less like a chess match and more like a game of dominoes where nobody knows how far the chain reaction will travel. In this imagined scenario, Trump makes the shocking call to authorize a limited nuclear strike aimed at destroying hardened underground facilities. The order moves through secure military channels with the speed and seriousness of a command that cannot be undone once spoken. Inside the Pentagon, officers follow strict protocols designed during the Cold War, procedures meant for the worst day in human history. Somewhere far away, a submarine crew receives encrypted instructions and instantly understands that history is about to change. The launch sequence begins with quiet professionalism, yet everyone involved feels the invisible weight of billions of lives connected to the decision. A missile leaves its silo like a lightning bolt, cutting through the sky with terrifying efficiency. Within minutes, early warning systems across the Middle East begin screaming alarms like smoke detectors in a burning building. Leaders in Tehran struggle to understand whether this is a single strike, the start of a war, or the beginning of something far worse. One Iranian commander reportedly shouts to confirm everything, because if the warning is real, the world has just crossed a line it cannot redraw. The targeted facility is destroyed, but the explosion sends shockwaves not only through the ground, but through global politics. News spreads worldwide within minutes, faster than rumors in a small town, except this rumor carries the terrifying confirmation of nuclear fire. Financial markets panic as investors suddenly realize that geopolitical risk has turned from theory into reality overnight. European leaders hold emergency meetings, wondering how a nuclear weapon was used again in modern warfare. China and Russia both condemn the strike immediately, warning that nuclear weapons must never become tools of ordinary conflict. In Iran, the leadership faces a brutal dilemma between retaliation and survival. Retaliation could ignite a regional war, but doing nothing might appear weak and invite further attacks. Iranian officials debate whether to respond with missile strikes against United States bases across the Middle East. Meanwhile, millions of ordinary people across the region suddenly fear that they are living inside the opening chapter of a new world crisis. Social media explodes with confusion, fear, and conspiracy theories spreading faster than verified information. The United Nations calls an emergency session as diplomats rush into the building like firefighters arriving at a rapidly spreading blaze. Some leaders demand immediate de-escalation, while others warn that the precedent of nuclear use could unravel decades of fragile deterrence. Military analysts compare the situation to pushing the first domino in a room full of explosives. Iran eventually launches conventional missile attacks against regional American bases, signaling anger without crossing the nuclear threshold itself. The Middle East suddenly becomes a battlefield of tense calculations where every move risks triggering the next catastrophe. Oil prices surge dramatically because the Middle East supplies much of the world's energy. Gas stations across the globe see long lines as people panic about shortages. Back in Washington, D.C., President Donald Trump defends the decision as necessary to prevent a greater nuclear threat in the future. Critics argue that using nuclear weapons, even in a limited strike, breaks a taboo that has lasted since atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. Historians begin comparing the moment to the darkest turning points of the Cold War. Meanwhile, military planners scramble to prevent further escalation between nuclear-armed nations. The fear is simple and terrifying. Once one nuclear weapon is used, the psychological barrier protecting humanity becomes dangerously weaker. All eyes question whether the global nuclear order has fundamentally changed overnight. Countries that once relied mainly on diplomacy might now consider building their own nuclear deterrence. Experts warn that this could trigger a global arms race, resembling a dangerous technological competition with civilization itself as the prize. In Iran, damaged infrastructure and political outrage fuel massive protests and national anger. Iranian leaders promise long-term resistance, comparing the moment to historical invasions that only strengthened their resolve. Meanwhile, global citizens watch anxiously, realizing how quickly one decision can shake the foundations of international stability. Commentators describe the crisis as humanity standing on a narrow bridge over a canyon filled with explosives. Every diplomatic conversation becomes crucial because one misinterpreted signal could push the world closer to disaster. Over time, emergency negotiations attempt to calm tensions and rebuild nuclear restraint. The crisis becomes a permanent case study in how fragile global security truly is. Future leaders study the moment as a warning about the immense responsibility carried by a single command. The world slowly stabilizes, but the psychological scar remains like a crack in glass that never fully disappears. And historians ultimately ask the same haunting question. If one decision could shake the planet this much, how carefully should the next one be made?